Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about a very unusual country. Its residents are the happiest people in the world. It's recognized as the least corrupt country in the world, and there are twice as many bicycles as cars on its roads. Almost every resident of this country knows how to swim, while its buses can tilt at stops to facilitate the boarding of the disabled, people with strollers, and the elderly. Here, it isn't customary to show off one's wealth by buying expensive cars or building luxurious villas. It is one of the countries with the smallest gap between the incomes of the poorest and the richest, and it is the leading country in terms of employment level. There are virtually no buildings higher than 6 stories in this country, and education is free. The working day for most people here starts at 8 a.m. and ends no later than 4 p.m. And prisons look a lot like hotels. There are neither severe frosts nor heat here. The temperature ranges from cool to somewhat warm almost year-round. The ocean can be reached in just 1 hour from anywhere in the country, and the capital of the state was recognized as the best European city to live in 2020. This is Denmark, a small kingdom in Northern Europe, which is often called the Pearl of the Scandinavian Peninsula. What makes a particular state function effectively? Defeating corruption or the ability to quickly implement initiatives in the field of education and medicine? Different governments use different strategies and approaches. Their effectiveness is assessed by various international indices and ratings. For example, the Rule of Law Index, or the Worldwide Governance Indicator, or the Social Progress Index. Surveys of residents of different countries are conducted annually. The data are summarized and analyzed, and the conclusions are organized in various categories and published. And although these indices may seem to be reflecting different areas of government activity, the same countries take the leading places in all ratings over and over again. Now, all Scandinavian countries consistently rank high in the above-mentioned ratings, but Denmark differs from its neighbors and from the rest of the world in that it has an almost perfect performance in the basic human needs ranking of the International Social Progress Index. These basic needs include food, medical care for citizens, and ease of access to basic communications and knowledge. However, it isn't only its citizens who can enjoy all the benefits of this country. The health and social care system in Denmark is well developed and accessible to anyone who lives there. For example, as an international student, you can receive financial assistance and have access to free language courses. The Danish welfare system relies more on mutual trust than on bureaucratic procedures. When Danes get sick and can't attend university classes or come into work, they just call and let them know. In Germany, for example, both the student and the employee are required to provide a doctor's note. Both countries have pretty good governance, but the Germans like to have everything specified on paper so that there is order, while the Danes just act like friends in almost any situation. Life in Denmark may seem expensive compared to other European countries, because the tax rates are very high, but everyone gets to experience the benefits they lead to. These are the benefits that citizens use every day. People here are socially active, friendly, and open. Watching a movie with friends in the evening or having dinner together is very Danish. The Danes love talking and hanging out, just spending time together, enjoying a cozy atmosphere over candles, delicious food, and interesting conversation. The Danish writer Hans Christian Andersen is certainly not Nostradamus, but being a famous storyteller, he was also noted as a prophet. In modern Denmark, it is generally accepted that the economic miracle that the country experienced in the second half of the 20th century was predicted, or maybe even pre-programmed, by the famous tale of the Ugly Duckling, which Andersen published in 1843. In the fairy tale, an ugly duckling had its family turn on it, even its mother. However, having experienced multiple hardships, humiliation, loneliness, and despair, it managed to turn into a beautiful white swan, which was happily accepted by another flock. Previously left behind by civilized Europe, a small country on the coast of cold seas, has experienced an equally miraculous transformation. Looking from a bird's-eye view at any, even the most remote corner of modern Denmark, you will see a combination of the beauty of untouched nature, respect for historical architecture, and breathtaking residential areas. However, for many centuries before that, the Danes survived off fishing and agriculture alone. The Danish peasant was the protagonist of many European jokes, along with the Finnish lumberjack and the Norwegian Santa Claus. Denmark continued to fish and dig in the ground, even when the European countries, such as Italy and Germany, had survived serious cataclysms in the middle of the 20th century, and were working on their economic transformations, which would make it into history textbooks. The country, located on the shores of the cold North Sea in Northern Europe, bought all its energy resources from gas-rich neighbors and oil-rich countries in the Persian Gulf. In the 1970s, the first oil crisis broke out. Gasoline and energy prices soared. 1 to 2 cold winters were enough for the Danish to reevaluate their approach. After living in the frozen huts on the coast of the North and Baltic Seas, like the duck from Andersen's fairy tale, they gathered their courage, spread their wings, and set off to do their job. In just a couple of decades, Denmark has changed completely. The country didn't just manage to fully provide itself with electrical and thermal energy, but also created a real high-tech economy on the ruins of an agricultural village. Denmark doesn't spend its gold and foreign exchange reserves on the purchase of energy resources abroad. On the contrary, national energy saving and energy management technologies are becoming one of the country's main export items. According to such an important indicator as the foreign trade turnover per capita, Denmark ranks first in the world. And the Danish economy boasts a completely unique feature. The country's GDP is growing every year, but the volume of energy consumption is not. That is, consuming the same amount of energy, the Danes manage to produce more and more goods and services every year. The Danes believe that socialism isn't the goal, but the means to achieving goals. And this is the key difference between the Danish model and the one that was imposed in the communist Soviet Union by the descendants of workers and peasants who overthrew the landowners and said goodbye to private property almost forever. In Denmark, socialism isn't perceived as some ideological concept about the equality of the poor and the rich, but as a policy of common sense. Soviet-style socialism presupposed total equalization, while Danish socialism presupposes equal duties. In the distant 70s, when energy-saving programs were in their infancy, the Danish government was led by people who had the courage to ask the citizens to save heat and light as much as possible, and the citizens responded. Accurate electricity meters were installed throughout the country to calculate the consumption of electricity, and the lights were turned off in the streets and in shopping malls during the night. Citizens didn't protest and spent the dark part of the day at home. By the way, even in modern Copenhagen, there's only one place where one can have a bite to eat at night. Fortunately for the tourists, it isn't McDonald's. An even bolder step was the law on weekends without cars. The authorities banned the operation of car gas stations on weekends. Thus, most Danes started using their cars only on weekdays, while the entire country took walks and switched to bicycles for the weekends. And again, the Danes accepted the initiative with understanding, and over time, many of them made a switch to two-wheeled means of transportation, including senior officials. The Danes demonstrated another side of their pragmatism when the country, in need of large amounts of electricity, refused to build unsafe nuclear power plants. Let me remind you that Denmark, the birthplace of the father of nuclear physics, Niels Bohr, was the pioneer in the development of wind energy. And to the detriment of many other items on the budget, the state, which wasn't rich at the time, allocated significant funds to the development of alternative energy sources. In just a few years, Danish companies didn't just develop solutions that made it possible to provide 20% of the country's energy sector with wind energy in 2010, but also became trendsetters in the global market for alternative energy sources. In the shortest possible time, Denmark acquired a new national idea: building an environmentally friendly country with clean energy. Denmark sets an example for the whole world on how to live a comfortable life without defiling everything around. Thanks to the new technologies, government funding, and the high loyalty of ordinary citizens, The country has begun to actively use bioethanol instead of gasoline, solar panels, waste recycling, and environmentally friendly waste incineration. Also, the Danes started increasingly using the local hay and straw as fuel for their thermal power plants, instead of the imported coal. In 2021, 80% of the electricity entering Danish electrical outlets came from renewable sources. Wind power alone rotates 6,200 turbines and generated 16.35 TWh of electricity. With a very modest supply of natural resources, the Danish economy relies almost entirely on human resources. The service sector occupies a large part of the labor market and the economy as a whole. For example, a significant part of the programming languages that we know were made by the Danes: C++, Delphi, PHP, Turbo Pascal. And the development of Google Chrome or Bluetooth technology sounds no less impressive. Denmark is truly a technological haven. Denmark's developed market economy depends on imported raw materials and foreign trade. Exports account for about 50% of the state's GDP. The country is known for its flex security system, designed to help employers adapt to a rapidly changing global economy. Government intervention in the operations of large and small enterprises is minimized. The system allows businesses to easily and quickly hire and fire workers, but it also guarantees laid-off people a decent support package for up to 2 years, as well as assistance in finding a new job. Denmark is one of the most developed countries in the world, with a $68,844 GDP per capita. This indicator puts the country in 7th place in the world ranking. It is literally stepping on the heels of such a superpower as the United States. As for the level of income, the state ranks number 10 by this indicator. However, it should be noted that the working day in the country lasts 6 to 6.5 hours. The international nonprofit organization World Justice Project has published its annual report, the Rule of Law Index. The main purpose of the study is to find out the level of respect for the law that the citizens of each particular state have. The combination of all indicators puts Denmark in the leading position of the rating. The study involved 102 countries. Such indicators as the legal environment, the existence of an independent and impartial court, the absence of corruption, and others were considered. Denmark scored 0.87 points out of the maximum of 1. Norway had exactly the same score, but taking into account all the indicators, it got 2nd place. An effective rule of law helps reduce corruption, fight poverty, improve public health and education, and protect people from injustices and dangers, great and small. All this would be impossible if ordinary citizens didn't understand and respect the need to save the country's resources and introduce innovative technologies. In other words, if they weren't willing to sacrifice a piece of personal comfort for the common good. Such is Danish socialism: common sense and a reasonable balance between the interests of the state and the individual citizen. Well, that's all for today, friends. Like the video if you found it interesting. Share your thoughts. Let me know if you're packing your bags to move to Denmark in the comments, and we'll see you next time.